Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs sits down with us to talk about the goals and challenges facing his agency. Hear from the head of the administration about what lies ahead. And a feature from Arlington National Cemetery, where we talk to those preparing for a major holiday on the hallowed grounds. Also, highlights from the American Veterans Center's American Valor Gala held this year in Washington, D.C. Hear from stars attending the annual event. Plus, the results of our investigative report on Who's the Bestest Boy. We learn about the winner of the annual Hero Dog Awards this year, featuring a dog with a mission to help the military community. It's a Veterans Day special on Defense News Weekly, but I'm also going to sneak in a story about AI in the Pentagon and something on a Navy drone firing a deadly rocket, so stay tuned for those. With the latest in news and analysis from the Pentagon to the platoon, this is Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Colin Demarest. The Department of Veterans Affairs has seen a pivotal year as some of the biggest legislation for vets in decades, the PACT Act, has come into effect since passage in 2022. The giant expansion of potential beneficiaries of VA services has meant an unprecedented workload for the agency and a range of new challenges. For a snapshot of progress and the issues faced by the country's largest bureaucracy, Military Times' Leo Shane sat down with the head of the department just before Veterans Day this year. Here's some of that conversation.
You've been talking lately at a handful of events about all the records the VA has set in the last year, record number of claims processed, record number of healthcare outreach, healthcare appointments. I wonder, looking ahead, if there is concern that VA is growing too fast. I know you want to reach as many veterans as possible, but there are hiring issues, there are access issues, there are quite a few ways that this can go wrong if veterans, find that they're facing long wait times, or they're finding problems in that. So how do you balance all of this outreach, all this advance with just making sure the systems can keep up?
It's a great question, and part of the answer is we meant it when we said we wanted the PACT Act to be passed and implemented, and we meant it because we really want vets to be in our care. There's no doubt that having more vets in our care, having more vets file claims, having more vets getting benefits means additional challenges for us, but I consider those high-class problems. We set out this year anticipating there was going to be a challenge on claims processing. As I was talking with you earlier today, we started in September 2021 using expiring 2021 funds to increase hiring at VBA. And we've only continued that since, anticipating we're going to have more vets in VHA care. Last year, after the President signed the PACT Act, we made FY23 a year of hiring. And we wanted to hire roughly 52,000 people. We hired more than 61,000. So we can see around corners, we can see what's coming, and I consider it a high-class problem if veterans are coming in and wanting to have a relationship with us.
Have you given thought to how big VA should get? This is something that we hear more on Capitol Hill than from the veterans community, but the idea that, yes, you've done all this hiring, that VBA's at historic levels, VHA's at historic levels. Is there a point where it's a self-feeding animal, where you're just hiring people for the sake of hiring people rather than looking at community care, looking at other resources? So, I mean, do you have an idea where, is there a maximum that VA should be?
Look, my goal is that we have a relationship with every veteran in the country, right? There's 19 million vets, between 18 and 19 million vets now. We have set a simple, straightforward goal that there'll be more vets in our care when we leave than were there when we started. Now, that's a challenge because we have a health system that is disproportionately weighted to veterans over 60 years old. And one of the real tremendous opportunities of the PACT Act is for us to develop relationships with younger veterans who have not had a relationship with the VA and may have been dissuaded from having a relationship with the VA because of some of the stories that they've heard, some of the experiences some of their battle buddies have had. And so I don't think there's a risk that all of a sudden we're too big, right? There are veterans who need access to health care. There are veterans who need access to mental health care. And we want to make sure that they know we're here for them and that they can get care with us.
You've made hiring a real focus of the last year. Dr. Elnahal and Undersecretary Jacobs have both said that they believe will continue to be very aggressive on hiring in coming months. Do you worry about finding the people to hire? Is there a point where VA has poached everyone they can, and are you looking at both initiatives to bring more folks in, but also to some of those specialists to grow some of them yourself, to be partnering with institutions?
Yeah, let me say two things about this. Every good hiring strategy starts with retaining the great people you already have and getting rid of the underperformers that you have. And we've been really forthright about both of those things. On retaining the talent we have, we've been aggressively using different tools to give those high-performing employees incentives, bonuses, so that they stay. When employees are not performing, we're being similarly forthright and aggressive. Not aggressive such that the enforcement actions, the accountability actions we take are not durable. It doesn't make any sense to relieve somebody and then have to bring them back 5 years later with 5 years of back pay. That's crazy. So managing this pursuant to the established rules of the federal government and being completely unsentimental about it. And that's what we're going to do. Now, to hiring. Yes, here's what I worry about right now. I think there's still a lot of talent that wants to come to work for us. But we're too slow to hire. So somebody's sitting out there, we give them a conditional job offer, and then we don't get back to them with the firm start date for months. It is maddening. We have to do better than that.
I've heard from quite a few veterans who have said, you know, I'm doing okay, and I shouldn't need to reach out to VA. There's always somebody worse than me, or you know, maybe I'm taking away services from someone else. With Veterans Day here, with this message going out to veterans, what is your message to those folks?
The warrior ethos that so many of our veterans personify is such an admirable thing. And that means that the way they've trained and the way they've lived their lives is to constantly look out for somebody else. And their instinct is to think, well, you know what? Somebody else needs it more than I do, so let's make sure that he gets taken care of and that I don't jump in front of the line for him. So that's a warrior ethos, but also let's be honest too, that that's maybe a hangover from underperformance from VA in the past, right? So the first and most important thing we can do, and I keep coming back to this, Leo, but we have to execute on the assignments we have. We have to make sure that the veterans who have filed their claims get a timely answer. We have to ensure those veterans who have enrolled with us can get into care in a timely way. When that happens, that will increase trust, including with those veterans who have said, well, you know what, it looks like VA has limited capacity. Let me make sure somebody else gets in there. So let's prove that we can handle what we got, point one. Point two, you know, sometimes the hardest thing is to do for yourself what you do for others. You know, we just did Buddy Check Week, right? Really awesome thing that the Legion got everybody focused on. But then all the VSOs got on board and VA got on board, checking in on other vets. That act is really important. vets checking in on other vets, but sometimes it also shows that vets are willing to help others more than they're willing to say, hey, I might need a little help. So when we execute well, we'll make that easier for vets to come in. Third, I can't underscore this strongly enough. The way we understand an individual veteran's experience is strengthened by the more we know about his or her unit. So every veteran that files a claim helps give us a more complete picture of that veteran's unit's experience. So even those veterans who don't intend to use what they file or what they qualify for, just the act of filing might help the battle buddy that you've got. So I urge them to please consider that. Lastly, you know what? A lot of our vets are very sophisticated users of healthcare. So they only come to us for certain things. Maybe they only come to us for our mental health care. Maybe they only come for our pharmaceutical services, because you know what? Prescription drugs at VA are very, very cost competitive, because guess what? We negotiate with the drug companies. Maybe some of them only come for eyeglasses or for audiology. Once you're in at VA, you're in for good, right? So you may not need it now, but I don't know. I'm 53 now. I'm not a vet, but I do notice that my body is a little different than when I was 33. So please file. That active filing might help us understand your battle buddy, but it also sets you up for, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now when you do want to come in and see us.
For more of that conversation, check out Leo's coverage on militarytimes.com. When we come back, a story on workers at Arlington National Cemetery, and the Navy attaches a rocket launcher to a drone ship. Don't go away. Welcome back. Arlington National Cemetery is a focal point for remembrance and appreciation for the nation's service members, and always makes sure to hold special events for Veterans Day. This year, reporter Molly Weisner spoke with people who work at the cemetery in advance of the weekend's services. Check it out.
Veterans Day is a national federal holiday that honors and celebrates America's service members. Now, it traces back to World War I, when on the 11th hour, on the 11th day of the 11th month of the year, the Allied powers and Germany basically came to a treaty to end the war. Now today at Arlington National Cemetery, it is a bustling event, and it involves the work of dozens of teams and many employees who work here all year round, but pay particular attention to how the grounds look on that day. Now it's a team effort that is planned months and weeks in advance, with the week before culminating in final touches that are truly a hands-on deck effort. It involves everybody from landscapers and those who worked with the trees and the squirrels, to those who are working in directorate offices to plan speeches and visits from government officials. We took a look behind the scenes and talked to some folks who do this work year-round and on this special day.
My name is Tyler Day. I am one of the electricians on staff here.
My name is Jay Walker. I'm the Chief of Operations here at Arlington National Cemetery.
My name is Stephen Van Hoven. I'm the Horticulture Chief at Arlington National Cemetery.
It's a pretty big process every single year. A lot of organizations that we coordinate with every year, from the White House, the Military District of Washington, of course, Veteran Affairs, as well as the local law enforcement that support the activities that we do here. So it's a 6-month process. We start early on to ensure everybody's on the same sheet of music to get us to November 11th itself. A lot of process meetings, a lot of IPRs, checking all the boxes and ensure that everything's in place and ready to go.
In the Horticulture Division, take care of all the grounds, trees, grass, turf, landscapes, plantings. So it's a lot, 639 acres, and there's just over 9,000 trees in the cemetery.
To be able to raise the flags up, obviously we use the lift. We tie them off to the rope and then raise them up out of the box, and one by one clip them along the outside of the amphitheater. That's not the first time I've done it. Being the electrician, we're used to using the lifts, so that's why they kind of delegate that task to us.
Later this morning, immediately following this interview, I'm going to have a walkthrough with the White House, Veterans Affairs, U.S. Secret Service, and law enforcement to kind of walk through how we're going to execute November the 11th. So we'll start from start to finish, we'll continue to process.
We aim to really maintain the cemetery at the highest standard possible all through the year. Every day here is important at Arlington.
The eye for most of this is all on the visitors, their public safety, and to ensure they have a good event. So there's a lot of attention to detail put into how we interact with the civilian visitors that come here, as well as how we bring any of the government officials in, and what that experience is going to be like today. We also want to ensure that folks who may not come here for the Veterans Day observance, they understand that Arlington Cemetery is open for everyone else. If you got another monument or a gravesite you want to visit, it will be open, and we will ensure you can get there on that day.
Because on these days like Veterans Day, we have just a lot of visitation to the cemetery, and people will not only come to the event here at the amphitheater. A lot of families will go to grave sites, and so there's just a lot of extra attention to making sure that everywhere is, to the extent possible, is as good as it can be. I mean, it is the backdrop for everything. So whether or not it's a funeral or a ceremony or Veterans Day, Wreaths Across America, the cemetery is often in the public eye, and so we always, the team just takes pride in that. You see the pictures on the news or whatever, and there's a great shot, and it's just like, that's what we're here for.
It's a real honor. I didn't imagine that I'd be working here once I retire from the military, but it's a big honor just to be here, to witness it all happen, and to ensure that it goes off right.
Next up, I can't let the week go by without some news from the Pentagon, right? The Department of Defense this week released a new strategy on its use of data analytics and artificial intelligence as it looks to increase its use of autonomous tech, including drones. The document is a more mature version of a blueprint released in 2018, which predicted AI would pervade all facets of national security, including on the battlefield and the boardroom. The goal, according to the strategy, is to enable military leaders to make better decisions faster by sorting through the noise and delivering the right info at the right time to the right people. Now, the big question. Does this mean a big scary machine in the bowels of the Pentagon is going to start making decisions on lethal strikes against American enemies? Yes. Just kidding. Pentagon officials say no, that won't be the case. Humans will remain the decision makers in the use of deadly force, and that applies all the way up to nuclear missiles. Semi-autonomous and autonomous weapons are governed by the appropriately cryptic Directive 3000.09, meant to reduce the risk of autonomy combined with weaponry. It was initially signed a decade ago and was updated earlier this year. Up next, more investment in AI development. The Pentagon requested $1.4 billion for AI development in 2024 alone, and the DoD is already juggling more than 700 AI-related ventures. For more on this story, head to my coverage on c4isrnet.com. The U.S. Fifth Fleet made some waves when it attached a missile system to a drone ship and successfully hit a target in a live-fire exercise. Launched as part of maneuvers called Digital Talon, the experiment paired a Devil Ray unmanned surface vessel with a lethal miniature aerial missile system in the Arabian Gulf. In footage released by the Navy, the system is seen launching the mini missile at a floating target and hitting it. The proof of concept is part of the work of Task Force 59, the Navy's hub for developing AI platforms and unmanned systems for the fleet. When we return, our personal finance expert is back with her latest financial advice as the Thanksgiving holiday approaches. Welcome back. On this edition of Money Minute, Navy Federal Credit Union personal finance expert Jeanette Mack talks about how you can use the resources you have to help those in need.
Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week is November 13th through the 21st. It's no accident it's the week before Thanksgiving. This is the time of year when, as a nation, we look for ways to spread happiness and share the wealth with others. And during this important week, you and your family can share your time and resources at local shelters or food banks to help families in need. Even if you don't have time to volunteer in person, you can still make a difference. Do a simple food drop-off, or go a bit bigger and organize a food drive or a clothing drive with your friends, family, neighbors, or even your coworkers. Some employers may even offer paid time off to volunteer with nonprofits in the community. Can't do a food drive? Use your social media clout. Raise awareness on your social channels. Share stories and resources to inspire others to get involved. Advocate for change, and remember, even small acts of kindness can have a big impact on those in need.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next week. To get more coverage of military and defense topics, get your personal surveillance satellite pointed at militarytimes.com, as well as defensenews.com and c4isrnet.com. And to be the most informed drone ship operator in the fleet, sign up for our Early Bird Brief newsletter, compiled each morning to bring you the latest headlines. It's also in audio. Check out the podcast version out each weekday wherever you get your podcasts. And if social media is where you get your open source intelligence, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X, Twitter. We also just fired up a brand new TikTok account that you don't want to miss out on. And stick around. After the break, highlights from the American Valor Gala and a service dog with a big impact in the military community. Don't go away. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. The American Valor Gala is an annual show of gratitude for the service members and veterans among us, anchored by some of Hollywood's best and brightest. This year saw the return of host Rob Riggle, a Marine veteran, and members of the cast of the miniseries Band of Brothers, among other guests.
It's a chance to spend an evening with some of the most amazing heroes this country's ever produced. So when you hear their stories and we get a chance to honor them, count me in.
I think it's just incredibly humbling to be in a room like this. You know, any good thing in this world was built with sacrifice of someone else, and that's what you see in this room tonight is great sacrifice.
You know, for me, the impact that I've had working in particular with Dev Crew and Special Forces and operators on my show has been so impactful, and their stories alone has brought me closer to their community and closer to what it means to sacrifice for this country. So being a part of this is just, it's a humbling experience, so I just love being here. A message to understand that the love and respect that we have for our men and women in service should be upheld at the utmost, above and beyond, what their active duty or beyond active duty. The respect and the decency that they deserve is huge. And that goes from saying hello, getting them a cup of coffee, spending time with them, listening to them. Love and kindness and compassion, very important.
This year's event honored members of the U.S. 8th Air Force, surviving members of World War II's Allied Air Forces who flew missions over Europe, and veterans of the Battle of Chosin Reservoir, among others. And to close out the week, what could be better than a story about some of America's best dogs? The winner of the annual American Humane Hero Dog Awards was announced recently. The winner? A therapy dog named Maverick. And if size is at all related to service or heart, this dog was a shoo-in.
When Maverick walks in, smiles happen.
Maverick has an incredible job. We have moments that we call sensitive request.
When these soldiers have had some kind of an incident, that could be anything from suicidal ideations to sexual assault of some kind, to family members who die.
We've had him sit in on suicide watch, and 6 months later, that soldier has come into the USO wanting to thank Maverick. That was their turning point. And I remember one saying, that's when she truly knew what unconditional love was meant to be.
Maverick is a 150-pound Great Dane and USO therapy dog who acts as an outreach animal to military service members and veterans. Hailing from the military community around Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri, Maverick supports service members on suicide watch, escorts children to military funerals, and helps others coping with trauma, injury, or stress. The partner of an owner undergoing cancer treatment, Maverick is a cancer survivor himself, making this dog even more remarkable.
I was diagnosed in 2017 with B-cell lymphoma cancer. I actually lost a portion of the roof of my mouth. And so I have been doing chemo now since November of 2021. In 2022, Maverick was also diagnosed. They found a lump on his back leg, and it ended up being cancer. Maverick's been with me through some of the toughest times and helped me through it, so I was proud to be there for him. And I'm glad to say he is cancer-free, and that he is doing great.
But we can't end the story without mentioning at least one of the runners-up. Just have a look at Raina, a blind and deaf Australian shepherd from Pennsylvania who acts as an advocate for pets with special needs. It's not military connected per se, but just look at this gorgeous animal who is 13 years old. Come on, melts your heart. And that's all we have time for in this episode. Thanks for watching, and we'll bring you more military news next week.